Hello, welcome to Bounty and Soul's Plant-Powered Kitchen. My name is Lyric. Today I'm going to talk about tofu, what tofu is, how you can cook it, if it tastes good. All of these questions are very common if you've never encountered tofu before. We have a lot of tofu going out at our Bounty and Soul market today, Tuesday, May 19th. So I just want to provide some information so that you can best enjoy this food if you've never tried it before. So tofu is made with soybeans, whole soybeans that are blended with water to make like a soy milk, and then that soy milk is coagulated using like some coagulating agents to create a firm block, which we'll see when we open the package. This tofu that's going out at market is extra firm tofu. Tofu comes on like a scale of firmness all the way from silken to firm to extra firm, and there's some kind of nuances in between, but essentially that's telling you how much water is in the tofu. And so this tofu being extra firm doesn't have a lot of water in it, so it's going to really hold its texture. It's not going to be as mushy or as soft and smooth and silky as like a silken tofu that has a lot of water in it. So the extra firm tofu that we have today is great for foods where you want your tofu to have a lot of texture and kind of stand on its own. So I'll be showing two ways that you can prepare tofu in this video. But the first step is to get it out of the package. So it can be a little confusing at first, but tofu comes in a package. Typically it has a plastic film on the top, and then it's a plastic hard-walled container on the bottom. So when you open your tofu, you just want to put it flat on a surface and cut into this film on the top. Don't try to hold it up or be up in the air with it, because there's a lot of liquid in here. You can feel it sloshing around. So you want to have it flat on a surface so that liquid falls to the bottom and you're not gonna splash yourself with the tofu liquid. So I'm just gonna take a knife and I'm gonna cut around the outer rim of this plastic film, because the tofu is in the middle. So I don't necessarily want to cut straight into my tofu. So you can cut around the edge of the plastic film, and you can see some water is already coming out. So I'm doing this over my plate. You can also do this over the sink. Either one is great. And so now I've cut two sides, so I can just go ahead and pull the plastic off. There's a lot of water in this tofu. So I'm just going to drain that water out onto my plate. And so now I have my block of tofu. And it's dripping, it's kind of wet. It's not fully drained yet, which is the next step of preparing tofu. You have to press your tofu or drain your tofu of the excess water so that you're really getting the texture that you want out of your firm tofu. If you don't press it and you leave the excess water in there, it can just lead to like a mushier dish. It can just add a lot of extra liquid that you may not necessarily want in your dish. So I'm going to put this tofu onto a fresh plate. And maybe you have a tofu press that's like a specific invention designed to do this. If not, you can totally just make it as you go. What I do for my tofu is I'll put a plate on top of it. So I have my tofu on a clean plate, a plate on top, and then I'll weigh down that plate. This is a jar full of water, so it's a little bit heavy. And I'll put it right in the middle of that plate, and that's gonna weigh on my tofu, and then I'll wait, at least 10 minutes. And I'll come back to this later and I'll see that there's a lot of liquid that's drained out of the tofu. Okay, my tofu's been draining for about 10 minutes. You can see all this water that's been pressed out of the tofu, and now I'm ready to start my recipe. Okay, so I've drained my tofu of the excess liquid. That's the first step in almost any tofu recipe. Today I'm going to show you how to make a simple tofu scramble. So you can think of this as kind of like a different take on scrambled eggs. So I'm not even going to chop my tofu for this dish. I'm actually just going to rip it up. So I've ripped off a piece, and I'm just going to crumble it with my fingers into, just around bite-sized pieces. You can just be fluid with it. It doesn't have to be exact. And something that a lot of folks don't realize about tofu is that it's by no means a new invention or a new idea or a new food. People have been eating and making tofu in China for at least 2,000 years. It's just us in America that are really starting to catch on to how nutritious and protein-packed and delicious tofu can be. So I'm gonna crumble up this whole block. I have fully crumbled my block of tofu. You can see I have some nice chunks in here. It has really like the texture and the appearance of like already scrambled eggs. And so now I'm gonna take this into the kitchen and cook it up. So I've already gotten some onion cooking up with a little bit of olive oil in my pan. The full recipe will be in the description of this video. You can also find the recipe on the Bani and Soul website, but it's really customizable. So you can just think about any vegetables that you would add to like a scrambled egg dish. So in this case, I'm gonna add onion, which is already cooking in the skillet. If you were to add something like peppers, you could get that cooking early too, garlic. All the instructions are in the recipe. And now I'm gonna add my crumbled tofu. And I'm gonna add some spices. So the most important spice in my opinion for this dish is turmeric. This is gonna give the tofu a really brilliant yellow color. Sometimes the white color like isn't necessarily that appetizing, especially if you're used to eating scrambled eggs and this is kind of a substitution for that for you. You wanna bring in some turmeric and it's gonna add a lot of really beautiful, pleasant color. You can add spices like curry powder, chili powder. I'm gonna add a little garlic powder from my garden. And of course you wanna get some salt and pepper in there. I have some ramp salt made with sustainably foraged ramps, which are a wild onion here in southern Appalachia. And I'm just gonna stir that around. This recipe is also a great opportunity to use some of this salt flake with seaweed. If you received this in your market box a few weeks ago, the seaweed really adds like that salty, sulfury flavor that you may be used to, again, if you're using this as a substitution for scrambled eggs. So you can see this beautiful yellow color that the tofu has taken on. I'm just gonna allow this to cook for 5 to 10 minutes so the tofu can really absorb the flavors of the spices and the onion. And I'm just cooking it on a low medium heat. So I've had this cooking for between 5 and 10 minutes. In this recipe, you're really not looking for the tofu to like change in texture or color that much besides absorbing the turmeric. So you can go ahead and taste it, and if it's already absorbing some of that flavor, then you're ready to go. If you choose to add greens to this recipe, you can do that towards the end. I'm gonna do that right now. I have my Organic Girl greens from my market box, and I'm just gonna add a handful right here at the end, and that's gonna help the greens to just wilt down without overcooking them. I just want them to kind of steam through. I'm gonna add some more too. I really want you guys to see this tiny baby kale. Yum! Here is my finished tofu scramble. You can see it has a beautiful yellow color. Those greens are nice and wilted down. I'm gonna give it a try. It's really good. The tofu has a really firm texture. It's absorbed a lot of the flavor of the spices that I put in there. And the greens are just cooked enough that there's a little bit of a crunch. I also went ahead and cooked some fried tofu. So this recipe will be on the Bani and Soul website. But you can see I cut the firm tofu into kind of rectangular, almost cube shapes. And I did a light breading of flour and nutritional yeast and spices, and then fried it in some olive oil on the pan. Really quick and simple. This is great if you're using tofu as an addition to a dish, so like on top of a rice dish or in a curry or even on a sandwich or something like that. A great way to kind of experience a different texture of tofu. It has a nice crunchy outer layer and then it's soft on the inside. So I hope that this video was helpful as you begin or continue your tofu journey. I would love to hear your favorite recipes that you enjoy tofu in. You can comment in comment on this video. You could also email me. My contact is in the description, and I look forward to cooking with you again soon.